Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to the today's panel discussion we have here entitled Women's Power, Alternative Nobel Prize laureates. Monika Hauser and Sima Samar will give a talk here today, and I think we will discuss today a very, very urgent topic, the situation in Afghanistan, and here with a particular focus on women's rights. Before we start the discussion, I would like, and before both Sima and Monika will give their input, let me just tell you some, give you some information just for the beginning. Today's event is organized by the Right Livelihood College. As you might know, Bonn, the Center for Development Research, is hosting one of the four campus of the Right Livelihood College worldwide. These are places where laureates of the Alternative Nobel Prize are joining and are discussing their themes with the younger generations. Today, this is a cooperation with today's presentation, also by a fairly large project entitled Crossroads Asia, which is covering the research at the Center for Development Research in the area on Afghanistan and its neighboring countries, and with the Bonn International Center for Conversion, which I'm headed now since 2 months, which I'm heading now since two months. Before I was at the Center for Development Research. So this is an honor for me today to chair the session as one who is on the one side, on half on the side for ZEF, for the Right Livelihood College, and the other side for Bonn International Center for Conversion. I'm very happy for having this discussion today because I think we got two very fascinating persons here on the table, and I'm sure that we will learn a lot today about the role of women in Afghanistan. I think it's right, just if I, from the discussion I had with you, I'm sure we got here a lot of women power on this table. And I'm sure that in this particular times we are facing in Afghanistan, we will have a very lively and perhaps also controversial discussion about the situation in Afghanistan. As you might know, the international troops will leave Afghanistan most likely in 2014. Next year we are also facing parliamentary and presidential election in Afghanistan. So the future of Afghanistan is quite uncertain, and somehow I feel that particular women's rights and perhaps the whole gender balance is a kind of a barometer about the changing situation in Afghanistan. Both speakers today are got something in common. You're both doctors. I learned that you both are medical doctors by training, and even perhaps didn't know this before, that the other one is also a medical doctor. And
long time ago, we know 2001, before the.
Sima received the Alternative Nobel Prize last year in 2012. So since it's the newest, it's the most recent award the Alternative Nobel Prize got. Sima Samar is working in particular on Afghanistan, particular for women in Afghanistan, since I think her whole life, but particular since the last 30 years. She worked in particular in refugee camps in Pakistan, built up their hospital, and since that time was very engaged for women's rights in Afghanistan. She was the Minister for Women Affairs in Afghanistan 2001, December 2001 to 2003, so in the early stage of the rebuilding of Afghanistan, and is also the chairperson of the Afghan Independent Human Rights Commission. I think this is another important issue she's still holding today. And she also received many other awards. Because we found a list of about, I think, more than 15 awards you received. So I think you're a very, very prominent person. Among them, the John Humphrey Freedom Award, Rights and Democracy, you received in 2001. Monika Hauser, particularly the one who are here from the Bonn region, will know her for sure, is based in Cologne. She did a lot, she became famous for her work she did in Bosnia in former Yugoslavia during the war. And here again, on the one side, particular for her work for the rights of women, on the other about trauma, about traumatized people in war times. Monika Hauser is the founder of the Medica Mondiale organization, most of you will know quite well. And also to mention that she just also received many awards. I'm really astonished about how many awards are sitting here on this table already. The last one, perhaps the most important one, the Staatspreis des Landes Nordrhein-Westfalen, you just received recently. And also to mention, because this has also not happened too much, you also once refused in 1996 one award when das Bundesverdienstkreuz, the Federal Cross of Merit, was offered to you, and particularly of the situation at that time where the German government sent Bosnian females back to a war-torn country. You took this you took this situation to refuse this award. I think this also shows that you're also that you both are very political persons and take your position very serious. What we are doing now is that both of you will give an input of about 10 minutes, and then I would just directly open the floor and ask the audience to ask questions, to come up with comments, and then I hope we will have a lively discussion. And I would like to ask Sima to open the floor with your with your input for about 10 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure and honor for me to be among you, and particularly to be with friends that we met first in 2001, and I hope that I was one of the reasons to encourage Medica Mondiale to come to Afghanistan. I'll briefly speak about the current situation in Afghanistan. As you all know, that we had a lot of troops from around 50 countries in Afghanistan, including the smallest country like Luxembourg. They had 3 or 4 people in the medical sector of the activities in Afghanistan. So we had around 50 countries troops, and it is more than 10 years now. Then finally they decided to withdraw. So first of all, they decided to give the responsibility of the troops to the Afghan authorities. Because when they came to Afghanistan, we didn't have a national police, no national army. The group who entered Afghanistan first, they were acting as a national army, national police, and intelligence service. So to make it really a national army and national police, it took a lot of time. So the international community was very much involved. And one of the things that the international community did in Afghanistan was they went to different provinces and claimed to be provincial reconstruction team. This was the military. So on that time, and still we were fighting that it's not the right name, because are you there to give security, provide security and protection to the people, or to do reconstruction? That's another question. I don't go on that. But now they slowly, since last year, they began last year, slowly to hand over the security of the provinces to the Afghan authorities and Afghan police and armed forces. So in that, what is missing, of course, women are not involved on the decision, and it's not enough awareness to the public that which kind of security or transition. And thirdly, it is very much militarized. It is not this, they have not looked at the civilian part of the transition very much. What they promised during the official transition handing over the flag is not materializing in the ground. That is one issue that we face challenges. The second issue is about the reconciliation, because everybody now is thinking that, okay, military is not the solution, so let's do some peace building and reconciliation. And unfortunately, there's a competition that who want to have Taliban. The Germany wants to see some Taliban. They brought some to Munich, to München. And the Norwegian wants to see some Taliban, and the UN wants to see some Taliban. So it is a lot of, everybody is looking, searching for Taliban, and try to find somebody with long beard and a turban and claim that they are Talib. Usually it doesn't happen. And the government also desperately doing that. And there's a lack of coordination, first of all, and lack of, unfortunately, as I said, negative competition to find Taliban. and lack of awareness and involvement of the people, particularly women. So there was a big jirga 3 years ago by the government, 2.5 years ago, national consultative peace jirga, and they came up with an idea that we should have a high peace council. So now we have high peace council with 69 people in that council, conflicting each other. They are the one who fought, and still some of them are taking a stand against Taliban, but some of them are Talib and the previous Talib, so they are interested on their own political agendas rather than really building peace. We have only 9 women as a member of the High Peace Council, and so-called good women, as I mentioned before, because the one who is not loud, the one who is not fighting a lot for women's rights, and the one who does not really too secular, let's say, the one who preserve their parda quite well, or wearing their scarf properly. But I think that it is not going to, so far they have not reached much. They have 2 kind of a program, reintegration and reconciliation. On reintegration, they find some group coming and they give some money to that group and they give some projects to that area. But sometimes there's no background check. So in Helmand, for example, once they announced, they showed in the television that the 18 Taliban came to join the government and they were clean-shaved. So in Helmand, nobody will believe that a clean-shaved Taliban exists to come and reintegrate to the government. And on this reintegration, sometimes they include them on the Afghan local police. This is unfortunately another parallel structure, which was the idea of General Petraeus, because he did it in Iraq, so he thinking that it will be successful in Afghanistan. We opposed a lot. We still opposing. We had a report against it, but it is existing. In some of those groups who claim to reintegrate, to rejoin the government, they are put in that Afghan local police, and they're the one who commit crimes. One particular group in one of the provinces in Afghanistan who killed a woman, and this man was leading the whole condition or situation. He was announcing that she should be killed, and then he was put with his group in the Afghan local police. So would you expect the people to trust that kind of policy and really believe that the peace would come? So that's another big question, and I don't think it will happen before 2014. And I think peace should come with a strong political will, with a lot of other issues in it, and particularly involvement of people and victims of human rights, including women. That's very clear. The other issues that we are facing is the election in 2014 that we have. It's a presidential election, and election require a lot of conducive situation, including security. So there is a discussion that how security will evolve after in 2014 that allow the election. But we, as a human rights activist, as a citizen of that country, we think that election is really key and vital for Afghanistan. And of course, participation of people in that election. It's not only the male member of the society should participate. It's also important that the female or women in Afghanistan, as a half of population, should participate on the election. And I think that the election will not be very free and fair, but at least it should be credible, that the people should not lose confidence on the process of promotion of democracy in Afghanistan. And then the other challenge that we are facing is the withdrawal of the troops. I have to say that I'm not very pessimistic on the withdrawal of the troops, because at the end of the day, we have to take the responsibility ourselves. How long the troops could continue to stay in Afghanistan? It's already 12 years, and the people should not be really depend on the foreign forces, number one. Number two, I think we are not in 1990s that the country would go back to civil war, we might have more insecurity in place, but you see these days that already almost every day we have suicide attack in some part of Afghanistan. And I think that there are few reasons on it. For one of the reasons is our president went to India and asked India for more military support, that our other neighbor is not happy. So he tried to push his puppet to terrorize the people and attack here and there. Secondly, it's the season. After the long winter and cold winter, usually we have a lot of attacks of insecurity in the spring. Thirdly, I think that they try to show that they are not ready for reconciliation. So I think the environment is getting more difficult for women because that everybody is in a mood of withdrawal and some kind of accepting some very extremist and conservative statement of Shura ulama, for example, or some mullahs and leaders, in order to show that to the Taliban that they are willing to give up some of the things to them, to show a goodwill to the Taliban. So, but I would say as a woman that we will not give up. And the young generation who got education will not give up their rights. And the freedom of media is really helpful on the condition in Afghanistan. I'll stop here in order to respect the 10 minutes. And we will be here for 2 hours, so I'll answer any question you have. Thank you.
Sima, thank you very much. I think it's particularly important also to make clear that this is not just the Taliban, but that we can find also some other elements, also particularly in the government, who are very conservative and are trying to also to constrain the women's rights. I think this is a very important issue. Monika, what's your perspective on the situation?
You can be sure that I will speak exactly about that, what you just mentioned, that the government is also itself very problematic. Thank you very much. I'm happy today that I have the opportunity to speak here together with my friend Sima about Afghanistan, as we already can see that there are not any more very opportunities in Germany or internationally to speak about Afghanistan, and we really can see that people, that the media and especially governments already turn their back towards this country where we are now performing since 13 years, one of the biggest, largest ever international intervention we ever have done. But situation now is really that everybody is looking to this year, 2014, with the withdrawal, and not seeing that our loyalty, our solidarity with Afghan people absolutely has to go on. I'm just back from Kabul also, and I have to say, and I'm very sorry, Sima, to say this, but it's one of the first time in the last 13 years that I really got pessimistic. Mm-hmm. And nevertheless, as you say, we are women like that we say, okay, but it has to go on. And when Afghan activists say we have to go on, who are we not to have the same energy, to take the same courage also from our side to go on? But with these words, I just want to say that situation is really got more and more difficult. And I also would like to mention that, of course, this is a situation where women's rights, where there were some progress in the last 10 years, are the first ones who are in danger to get lost again. And of course, it's also a question about credibility, and a lot of credibility has been lost in the last, let's say, at least 5-6 years, since there were the first 2 elections where it was clear that Karzai and his allies have really falsed these elections, we have to say like that. And of course, without credibility, how can a government work? but also international community has lost a lot of credibility, because from the very beginning it was clear it should be a civilian reconstruction intervention, but it got a complete military intervention by the time. And unfortunately, not only the US made this military strategy of enduring freedom, especially in the south of Afghanistan, but also their allies from Europe and also Germany in the north of Afghanistan more and more joined this kind of counterinsurgents instead of really doing civilian reconstruction, of supporting a police that we can call it really a police for the population. But instead of that, we see the military strategy in the international intervention, what caused a lot of more problems. And how can anybody think that with weapons we can solve such problems, which we have since many years now in Afghanistan? So it was the wrong strategy from the very beginning. And when I hear now that European politicians and also the politicians in Berlin say, but now we will shift to civilian reconstructions, it's 10 years too late. And it has to start now, immediately. Because, for example, good governance, we do not have any kind of good governance in Kabul, in this government. We have a lot of corruption. We have warlords sitting in the government. We really do not need Taliban. We have a lot of war criminals in the government just now. And we have people in the government, maybe Afghan people never would have elected these people. But of course, from the very beginning, the US administration was here very strong to put their good guys in the government in Kabul. And I think this is, since 13 years now, a big problem. And it goes hand in hand with the question of justice. Which kind of justice do we have in this country? President Karzai has installed an amnesty law, I think in 2008, where all the war criminals 30 years back have amnesty. I mean, only this shows that this country cannot have any kind of reconciliation if you do not make responsible any war criminal. The situation of the women is very difficult because we are here we see a very patriarchal, very traditional society. But I would say that in the last 10 years, a lot of chances were lost because there were the possibilities to install more and more women's rights. We see women's rights activists in the country who have a lot of courage to go on with their activities, but neither the Afghan government nor their allies, nor the international community, the international governments really are supporting these women's rights activists in the country. We have a high level of violence against women. We have around 80% of forced and child marriage. So 80% forced marriage, and from this 80%, 50% child marriage. We have one of the highest maternal mortalities in Afghanistan. And the problem is, of course, now, since 2009, beneath the constitution with its law for equality between men and women, we have a rather good law against what is called EVA law, what is called elimination of violence against women. This law now we have since end of 2009. President Karzai has accepted this as a presidential decree, and with this law, hundreds of men could be accused and could be sentenced in different Afghan cities. But the problem is our Afghan colleagues from the lawyers from Medica Afghanistan, they have also not only the task to make legal representation of female prisoners, but also doing awareness raising within the justice system, because most of the judges, most of the attorneys do not know their own laws. So these medical lawyers have to bring in awareness raising, the knowledge about this law, and then, but But then we have seen that judges start to accuse perpetrators after this law, and now it started really to be, can I say, enforced, this law. And but now we face a very difficult situation, but because everybody knew that this law, what was just a presidential decree, should not go to the parliament, because in the parliament we have over 90% of these old men who, of course, have nothing in mind what is supportive for women's rights. And exactly that happened now 1 week ago, that this old man opposed this rather good law. And now, in the moment, I think they ceased the further debate about the law in the parliament, but it's a very problematic situation, because it's obvious that the parliament doesn't want to go on with this law. But this law was the one progress in the last 10 years. And what is something what makes me hopeful again now is that we had several demonstrations in the last time. Anyway, we had all the last months, we had a lot of demonstration. We just do not read about this in our Western medias. But also now recently we had demonstrations in Kabul and in other cities, also concerning this EVA law. And you can imagine how much courage you need in this country as activists to go on the street and to be very clear about this, that the women are going on with fight for their own rights. And I really expect from international community, and I expect also from the German government, to take their, to take their scope of action, really to support these activists, to support civil society in Afghanistan, and tell their colleagues in Afghan government that they should go on with implementing this law, as it is also mentioned, this is my last point, as it is also mentioned in the Tokyo framework. You know, the Tokyo framework, what was, agreed between international community and Afghan government last year in Tokyo. We have there a clear indicator for implementation of this EVA law. And we hope really that the international community, German government, takes their actions towards government in Kabul really to insist on fulfilling this implementation. And by that, also German government could show their clear loyalty and the clear solidarity with Afghan women.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Also make clear this coincidence of the military withdrawal on one side, and then on the other side that the women's rights become more and more neglected also in German politics, and perhaps in European international politics in general, the women's rights in Afghanistan. I think that they're really coming, particularly in these days, under huge pressure, particularly with the EVA law you're mentioning. I think this is currently highly debated in Afghanistan. I would like to open the floor for questions or comments from your side.
Thank you.
Alma, from that one?
I'm wondering if ZEF, I have a question, actually to both of you. This morning, Mr. Samar, you told us, you gave us a kind of historical overview about what happened since the mid-80s in Afghanistan. And in the end, you became quite positive about the period of international intervention. You had said that a lot of things had improved, and well, you have to summarize from earlier overview. Mrs. Hauser today was very critical about this period. So my question is, what do you think is the net effect of the international intervention since 2001? I mean, the official justification for intervening in Afghanistan was one, chasing bin Laden, which took, I think, 10 years, and the second thing was the human rights situation. So my question would be, very optimistic, very pessimistic, what's the net effect of the international intervention?
Should I begin?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me put it this way, that the intervention of the international community was forced by the attack in New York and Washington. It was not really planned. And as I also mentioned that we were neglected in 2002 after the USSR was gone. So we were just left without any intervention by the international community, who was our friend during the war against Russia. We achieved a lot. I have to mention that the situation is not comparable, the improvement. But with what price? Was it cost effective? Was it properly planned? Was the human right, was the real agenda? Because human rights and women's rights is always a side part of any intervention. Not only in Afghanistan, in other countries. I mean, we just discussing, I was in another forum when they were talking about and it was today in the news that they are talking about arming the opposition in Syria. Will the arming of the opposition in Syria will be helpful for the conflict in Syria? And I think it will be another Afghanistan. I'm not saying that Bashar Assad should not go or should not criticize, but do we exchange one evil to another evil? So it is, human rights is also part of the politics, unfortunately, in any context. But I have to say that we achieved a lot in Afghanistan, but it is not satisfying us. And I'm also critical of the action. It is corruption in Afghanistan, where the people still everybody doesn't have access to clean water, everybody doesn't have access to education, everybody doesn't have access to health care. And I even mentioned this morning that out of the 6 flights per day to India, 80% are patients who goes to India. Imagine when I was a student in 75, we had a center, a radiotherapy center for cancer patients. We do not have it today, with billions of dollars which came to Afghanistan. So I have to say that it could have been much better than what we are today.
I think we have to be very clear about that. From the very beginning, this international intervention, served their own interests. It didn't serve the needs of the Afghan population. But we can have a look also to other former war areas. Where was the intervention really successful, and where was it really mentioned for the people themselves? But I think Afghanistan really is such an example where you can see absolutely the own interests, and I was very hopeful in the beginning that the European countries will go another way than the US administration, Bush administration, then in the early years, and that European countries really start to transform their lessons learned, let's say from Bosnia, from Kosovo, that they really start not with a military intervention, but that they start with civilian reconstruction, with reform of justice system, with good governance input, with economical support. I mean, without economic progress, how shall this country can go on? No chance. And of course, human rights. I mean, I really have to tell you that the activists in Afghanistan who are fighting and risking their life each day, they are performing the human rights where we Europeans are speaking each day about. And I think it's very important to have an analysis about this for their own intervention. But so far, Germany or international community, but Germany also doesn't refuse any sensible evaluation so far. And I think, how can you do such a expensive, cost-intensive intervention without evaluating it one day? Or it should have begun very early to evaluate it. But still, after 13 years now, I can't see that there is any meaningful intervention, evaluation. But to speak about optimism or pessimism, I have to agree to your last word that I see progress in the country, but it's not because of Afghan government or international communities, it's because of the local activists, because of courageous activists, human rights activists, as Sima Samar is, and as our colleagues from Medica Afghanistan are, or other male and female activists from the many grassroots organizations we have in the country. And despite this difficult situation and despite the deteriorating situation in the country, they go on day for day. And this is something what gives me also again then some hope that that this is the power who has to change, and this would have been the power where our countries, our governments should have been supportive from the very beginning. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hi, Julie Stark from United Nations University. I'm coming from the context of working in Niger and studying the situation in Mali, which of course has been said in many media forums that it will be the next Afghanistan because of the role of Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb. So what I'm wondering about is, with the role of the Taliban and the way that the Taliban has influenced public opinion within the country, what is the role of the international community in bringing development to the region, bringing economic development, etc., especially when the force and the ideology that's being put forth by groups that are within the realm of radical Islam, or I'm not sure if you call it something else, but are anti-modernization and anti-capitalism in some cases. And so what are the ways that we need to engage as an international community so that there can be more solidarity with these activist groups, for example, that are trying to make change? And the difficulty, of course, there, especially in Mali, which is an area I'm more familiar with, is trust of the activists, which side they're on, and this sort of thing. So what suggestions do you have as far as creating these kinds of alliances so that there can be international cooperation for promoting economic development?
Would you like me to answer? Or both of us? On the conservative ideology, I think it is not really the ideology, I have to say. It is what has happened at the beginning after the intervention of the international community. It was really a lot of hope and a lot of false promises, or a big promises which was not delivered. I don't know if the intention was false, but it was a big promises which was not delivered. So when they came, they said they do this, and everything would be very good in Afghanistan without really looking and prioritizing what should be done. So that is the issue. I think if the government is really in position to provide the minimal security to the people will not listen to Taliban. The lack of good governance, the corrupt judiciary system is pushing the people to adapt a survival policy, because nobody is there during the night in the village to protect them. Then the Taliban comes, and if they don't give them space, if they don't even give them food, they will kill them. Should they just let them stay in their house, even feed them, not to be killed, not to be their house to be burned? So that is the situation, the reason why the people, number one. Number two, I think the people saw that the same people who committed a violation of human rights and did all the bad things, looting their properties, taking their girls by force, the killing and disappearing of their family member, the same people came to power backing by international community. So how they could legalizing the illegal leaders, giving them legitimate position. So how the people could trust. The same person who was a commander of a small group, now he's chief of police, for example. So practically he has more power than before. What the people should do? When they go to the court or to the judiciary system, the case takes years, and they have to pay whatever they have in order to reach to some kind of a justice. But when they go to Taliban, the Taliban immediately take revenge without any court. They hang the person who kills the family member. Who would go to the court and wait for years and years and give everything they have? They are not sure at the end of the day they get the justice. So these are the issues that push the people to the adaptation of survival policy, rather than supporting the conservative ideology that they have. The other issue that I would like to say, that who, as a human being, do not want freedom? Who, as a human being, do not want to have a clean water? Who, as a human being, do not want to have a human security? Why I should be afraid if my daughter goes to school and I'm not sure that she's coming back home safely? How can I have a full confidence that I, as a human being, if I get a heart attack, that there's this place that I could go and get some kind of assistance? So these are really important to be provided to the people in order to build the confidence. But small group of people became so rich with capitalization or privatization, because they give their own lovely one the contract of road building, let's say. This road building goes to a big company from their own countries, and then it's subcontract to 3, 4 Indian, Turkish, or national companies. Few people, 5 people or 10 people in the chain gets very rich, but the people doesn't have the job to do. And I was personally, and we were the people who think like me, we were insisting that for intensive labor work, like the road construction, should be really absorb a lot of people. No, it's machinery. And I give you an example. The road in Bamyan, the contract is given to a people from Khost or Jalalabad for a different ethnic group. They bring 20 people and build a road. And it can be thousands of people work over there and feel the ownership and protect in the future. They see that somebody is coming and putting a mine, they don't protect it because they say, okay, the benefit gone to another person from not even from our village. Or they contract for a road building in Paktia goes to somebody from north or somebody from central part of Afghanistan. So there was lack of understanding. I don't know what to say. Or commitment, I could say maybe, than understanding. And they were not listening to us because they keep saying that the foreign expert on Afghanistan knows Afghanistan much more than the Afghans, which is wrong. How many of these experts speak our language? But we have a lot of, I keep saying that we have a lot of non-Afghan experts who knows Afghanistan much better than us.
Sima, thank you very much. I think it's important to mention in particular this missing rule of law. I think what's makes the tremendous effect in Afghanistan. The other thing, what also the research at ZEF found out, that particularly the intervention lead to a stronger social inequality, that only very few people are benefiting from the intervention and most of the people do not. So that the social inequality is increasing a lot. Monika, you want to add something particular to this question of the alliance building? I think this was another.
And I would just like to add what Sima explained already to add, because you asked for the ideology of Taliban. I think we really should be very careful to also to see, not to believe everything what is written in the media anyway, because we can be sure a lot of that is embedded and serves different interests. And the Taliban got really something interesting. Of course, they are existing, and this is nothing we have to doubt about. But if you just think back, that the US supported them very much to be the shield against their enemy, so-called enemy at that time. They have been the helpers that the Taliban even grew up that much as we have them now. So this is one thing to have in mind. And then I completely agree about your survival policy, because I think exactly the actions of enduring freedom have made so much damage in the south of Afghanistan with all their so-called collateral damages. Villages were destroyed, people in these villages were destroyed, men came home and found the whole family killed. Of course, they had to go to the Taliban because of this survival policy. They had no other any opportunity. But what I want to say is that the Taliban were a product of the US, and now they could go on and get up again because of the wrong military interventions of the US. So I think it's very important to see these international involvements also. And there is no trust of the population in justice and in the government, as you just mentioned. And I think rule of law is very, very important, and we could speak hours about the justice system. But I think also again to see how does international community take over the responsibility for any kind of justice. We spoke about that there is this amnesty law now since several years where no war criminals can be punished because of that. Sima Samar and her organization have written a very important documentary about war crimes. I think some 800 pages this documentary has, and it's just like, can I say who is who of Afghan establishment? So, and I don't know what is the current situation about this documentary. Would be very interesting for all of us to hear about. As I got it, you are not allowed, you are not permitted to publish this documentary. So what's about the international community who has started 13 years ago this intervention and said we will bring reconstruction, progress and democracy to this country? I think populations, countries should be very careful if anybody tells them we bring democracy to your country. Could be very dangerous for them. And my last point to that, the responsibility also from German government. Mr. Dostum, if I call him Mr., the war criminal from Masai-Sharif, has been in Berlin last January, the year before. Yeah. And a German parliamentarian told me this after, and he said we didn't know in the German parliament about this, that this war criminal was invited to any, I think, US financed conference in Berlin. Can you imagine? We are very much deep in this whole shit. So we cannot only speak about the Taliban and their ideology, we have to look to ourselves. What's our responsibility?
Wasn't that only
Can I
yeah,
just?
Sure.
I think what is alternative, I think we have to do a few things. One, I think education is really needed. Quality education. Not madrasa-style education that we have. Two, I think we have to really give access for the women to reproductive health. Reproductive health. Particularly contraception. if we really want to reduce poverty, if we really want to provide better quality of education and health services, so any other basic social services. 3, I think that we really need to have a human right-based approach for everything, for development and for capitalist intervention or privatization, whatever you call it. It should be a little bit of accountability in terms and condition. Currently, the people do whatever they want without any condition. I mean, it just reminds me that I saw somebody from the U.S. defense structure in the airport. He said that when they're closing their PRTs, they want to give the table and chairs and computers and tents to Afghan government. So they went to our Minister of Finance that we want to give these things to you instead of taking it back to the US because that is more costly. And of course, what was the response of our Minister of Finance? He said, first, pay the duty because you brought here without paying any custom and then give it to us. So who's going to do that? Instead of sitting really coming to an understanding that what is beneficial, if they even transport it back to the US, they will dump it somewhere because it's trash. Then nobody was going to do that. But you see the mentality in both sides. I'm not only blaming the international community, but ourselves also. On the report, I'm sorry to take a lot of time. The report is ready, at least the English and the Persian part. We have it with name and without name. We put code for the names to be safe. To be safe, the reason I'm saying is that the work of the Human Rights Commission or myself is not only to create tension, it's really to bring changes, to use it positively in a better reconciliation in the future of Afghanistan. But even with that, coding and removing the names, we have problem to publish it. And I need protection for my offices around the country and for my staff.
And just to add, how can it be that human rights activists who make this documentary, these reports about the war crimes, are much more in life danger than the ones who have done it?
Okay, is there a question?
You partly answered my question already, but it seemed like a big loop where you don't know where to start rebuilding this country. And if someday in Afghanistan you would be in charge as a president, or you theoretically know, what would be the main and the first thing that you would like to change?
Well, I think what I would do is to look in the last 10 or 12 years and to see what really went wrong and prioritize for myself 3, 4, not 22 priority. We had another conference on Afghanistan in 2011, July 2010. They came with 22 priority, National Priority Program, NPP. So, and one of them, which is good governance and human rights, we were leading, the Human Rights Commission were leading. So we came up with an action plan with a clear benchmark. In fact, this NPP, this part, because we were leading, was the first to be ready and the first to be ratified by the international community and ourselves. But we don't know where is that gone. 22 priority. The rest of them, I think, is not yet finished. So I don't understand, even if Afghans, according to some of the international community, are not very expert, are not really qualified, are not very educated, and don't have any experience on development. But what is their expertise? Why they accept and change every year the new agenda and new action plan? And now we have the Tokyo Mutual Accountability. that
framework.
framework, where, as she mentioned.
Nevertheless, I would like to come back to this question. If you have to set one priority, and I mean, you know, you were very, very close to politics in Afghanistan during the last 12 years. Just from this knowledge, what would be your priority?
Accountability and justice.
Okay. You had one question over there?
Yeah, I have some remarks to the past and a question to the future. I would certainly agree that there was a terrible mismatch, and there is a terrible mismatch between military intervention and development cooperation, especially as far as the costs are concerned. And I would also go as far as to say, if we had in Germany spent 50% less on this huge military intervention and maybe 50% more on development right from the beginning,
Yes.
the result would
Much
have
more.
at least have not been worse, but much
Better,
less
yes.
costly. However, I think it's easy to criticize. If we have learned one lesson in development cooperation, it is, as you rightly say, that one cannot from the outside install good governance, democracy, not even economic development, up to a certain degree, maybe yes, not social development. For cooperation, you need partners. And the situation in Afghanistan, if I see it rightly, in 2001 was that there was very little structure to build on and to cooperate with. Civil society, yes, there were activists, and yes, they should have been supported much more. But civil society, in comparison, for example, to India, is fairly underdeveloped at that time. What about the structures on the communal level? Was there any legitimate local body? I'm not sure. What about this provincial level? As you just said, the provinces, some of them at least, were in the hands of war lords and criminals. But
And they are
were
still.
there. And we could not say, okay, we just shut our eyes and build our own provincial government. What about the national government? What about judiciary? All this that could have sort of provided some points where to link up, were at least not very developed, to say very, very cautiously. So, if we had poured much more money into the country on the development side, in 2001, in 2002, in 2003, how to spend it properly? Would that not have created even more corruption, even more embezzlement? So, that brings me to the question. After 2014, there will be a new situation. Military intervention will be little. And by the way, I wanted to add something to the military and to the situation for the German government in 2001. I think it was certainly a mistake that the German government succumbed to the huge American pressure to sort of intervene mainly on the military side. But there was 2001, the general climate that one needs to help the Americans in this situation. There was the question of alliance with the US. So the pressure was really tremendous. And it's easy to say it was all wrong. Yes, I fully agree that it was all wrong to believe in this illusion that the military can reconstruct a country, that the military forces can do development work. I agree, but I mean, one has also to see the let's say, the environment in which this kind of political measures can develop. But now the question there. Let's say in 2014 there is another government with or without Taliban. Let's say even that government is not ready to do what you say, namely to invest in the judiciary, to invest into accountability, to invest into development of civil society, protect activists and so on. What should we do? Should we just, what kind of pressure can we exert that the new government, the new structures go into the right direction? Should we sanction? Should we stop aid altogether if activists are put into prison and so on? What is your perception?
Okay.
Yes, many crucial questions came up
Yes.
here, and Sima, I'm sure you will find some good answers.
Yes, I try to. On the civil society, I have to say, when we were in a very, very difficult moment in Afghanistan, we had those NGOs who really somehow assisted the people, that civil society. So how much they really supported us, I'm one of them. So the reason I'm saying, and I'm trying to show the optimism, that we really have much, much better situation when we were in 80s and 90s. So there's no doubt on that. So how much they really build on those. If you began from the National Solidarity Program, which all of us, we claim that it was very successful, they choose among some of the NGOs, or they brought some of their friends and built companies or NGOs who ran those instead of really promoting some of the NGOs that already was in the ground, already had a good background and good level of experience. So, for example, we were building schools during the Taliban, during the even the Russian were there when we were providing health and education, and building schools. And then what has this government done? The construction should not be done by the NGO. It should be done by companies to promote private sector. And then who's that company? Their own, some people in the government or in the overall setup, they build their companies. Who has the company? The warlord, because they had the money. They were able to buy the machinery. But still, if we keep those companies accountable, then we would have achieved some much more on the reconstruction and much more on the development. The other issue that we have not done much, of course, because Afghanistan was in focus. I don't know how many German troops came in 2002 in Afghanistan, because we had only 4,000 of overall NATO troops. And I have to say that when I was threatened by the warlords, we had a German general who was leading the ISAF. And we tried they were just handing over to the Turkish, because 6 months of their work was over, and then the Turkish took the responsibility for another 6 months. So is there consistency on their work? There's a commander from Germany or from the US, even from the US, when one general goes, the other one comes, they completely shift their program. They implement their own mentality. There's no consistency. And the small experience that I would like to share with you, we were working with the Americans in order to have access to their detention centers. We as a Human Rights Commission. We worked with, I don't know how many commanders, and they had legal advisors. We come very close to the signing of Memorandum of Understanding. And then that person go, and the next commanders come, and they go to the Ministry of Interior to sign the letter. The Minister of Interior signed a letter that we can have access to this conditions to those areas. We refused. We said, excuse us. One, we are not under the Minister of Interior. Two, we do not accept the condition which is against our principle. Like, they were saying that one, we would have access, a limited access to Afghan detainees. And I said, remove the word limited and remove the Afghan, because there are non-Afghans who are in Afghanistan, even if you don't give us access, but remove that from the Memorandum of Understanding, because we want the Memorandum of Understanding to be public. 2, they said we cannot do interviews with them privately. Somebody should be there, and they even brought an Afghan American, and they were trying to convince me that she's working for another company, and I said it doesn't matter, but it's an American company. For the prisoner in the detention center, they cannot recognize which company you're dealing. It's Dynacorp or Blackwater or I don't know what. 3, they said that we cannot publish the report unless we get their permission. And I said, I am not getting permission for our reports from our president. How should I come and ask for permission from you? Imagine we began in 2004. We got finally the access to their detention centers, again to limited number, in 2010. There was no consistency. You're right, it's very easy to criticize because we are not in that position. Then Afghanistan was not important because they went to Iraq. So diversion of attention and resources to Iraq. Afghanistan was a success story. Why we are not success story today when we were success story in 2003?
Just the question, the sanctions. So how should the
No.
German government?
I think it should be mutual accountability, as they mentioned. That should be in both sides. Both sides should be accountable to each other. And it should be coordinated within the international community and Afghan government. And make the report public to the people. Because we hear that billions of dollars is promised, we don't know where it's gone.
I think it's very important to criticize, but not only to criticize, of course, the evaluation and to analyze the situation is very important, that we do not do the same mistakes again and again. And I think in 2001, there would have been a different situation to include local Afghan expertise. Of course, there have been some, as Sima just mentioned, some NGOs they have been assistance to the local population and not the government, as she just said. And what did the international community, looking to the conference in Petersburg, not far away from here, there was Mr. Dostum and other war criminals, but not democratic-orientated people who were just waiting for their chance now to build up their own country again. But they were not invited. The war criminals were invited. And so the international community gave a signal from the very beginning. These are the ones with whom we want to cooperate. And this was a bad signal from the early stage. And now we also see the problem, of course, that I say on the one side there were existing NGOs and structures, but of course the civil society and especially the women would have needed much more support for building up own structures. But now we see the big problem because in that international community has not invested, not from the very beginning. And I just want to tell you, Medica Mondiale has supported to build up the structures of this organization, what is now independent and is called Medica Afghanistan. This organization now since 1 year is independent with 70 Afghan female experts, lawyers, psychologists, and so on. And only in the time of 9 years we were successful in building up this structure. So what is 9 years? So of course, with a lot of motivation and a clear commitment and a clear focusing on empowerment, you can build up such structures. But this was not in the interest of international community. And I would like to add, if you were the president and you would ask me as a non-Afghan advisor, Of course, I would tell you something what you know your own, but I would pronounce this, that the integration and participation of women is one of the most crucial element of reconstruction of a country. We have now, since the year 2000, we have the UN Resolution 1325 on the participation, protection and prevention of violence for women and girls in war and post-war areas. In this resolution, all important guidelines are written down. And still we can see that nor international community nor local governments, with the exception of Liberia, to use, to implement this very important UN resolution. And there it's very clearly said, participation of women in each stage of the development. For peace negotiations, for example. As I said, in Petersburg, how many women were in Petersburg, Sima?
Well, in the first, I think it was only 1 or 2.
1 or 2 women. So until the end, now 10 years.
Voice.
10 without voice. 10 years later, we had this conference in London, donor conference in London. I think it was in 2008 or something like this. 6. But there was another one in London. Okay, yes. But it doesn't matter whether we take Petersburg 01, London 06, or Tokyo 2012. How many women were there? Born. How many women? No women, nearly no women. And if there were women, the microphone was turned off. So with women without voice, as you say. So this is really the lesson. International community should have learned now that only with the participation of women, the topics of the women exist even, because everybody else forgets about them. So, and only if you install women's rights, you can have a real sustainable building up of a society. Without women, no peace. That's a very easy slogan, what is so true, and what we can see especially in Afghanistan. And you said this coincidence of the deteriorating situation of women's rights, this EVA law, what is now in question, and the withdrawal. This is, of course, a coincidence, what goes hand in hand. The neglection of women's rights goes absolutely hand in hand with the worsening of the human rights situation and with the general situation in such a country. And I think, so this is really my message, I suppose our message, to include and let participate women from the very beginning in order to build up a country, because then would you have involved women like Sima, and there were women in 2001, of course they were there, but nobody was looking for them. If you would have involved them from the very beginning, the legal reform would have been a clearly priority, or that what you said, accountability for justice, would have been in the first hand the priority. And I think this would have, we would have a completely different situation than we have today.
Yep. Thank you. Oh, no. Big wave of questions. Just one issue I would like to mention, because I just the other day was in a meeting, or last year was a meeting by GIZ about what went wrong in Afghanistan. And there was an agreement on the most problem. The main problem we did was we didn't build up any capacities. And the question was, what do we learn out of this? Nothing. Yeah, so still until today, particularly, or for example, the German NGOs or development institutions like the GIZ, they don't got a strategy to build up capacities for Afghanistan. I think this is something where the lesson is clear, but they didn't change anyway the way how they act in the country. And I'd now first Till Stellmacher, and then I go around. Till.
Thank you. You were talking about the Dutch disease triggered by foreign donors, interventions, etc. I mean, these were basically Western-driven donors. I was thinking about that the state building in Afghanistan was basically driven by the idea to establish a buffer zone between the then Russian Empire and the British Empire. So this drives me to the point of the cross-boundary kind of networking or dynamics, be it socially, politically, as well as economically, which is, I think, very important. I mean, borders are often not more than kind of lines or drawings on a map. Yeah? So how would you assess the kind of transboundary dynamics in Afghanistan and around with the neighbors?
I think, as you mentioned, during the war, as I mentioned before, that we had millions of Afghans who went to Pakistan and millions of Afghans who went to Iran. And by the way, they really worked hard on those millions to brainwash them, to turn to their own supporters, because they had their own interest in Afghanistan. Then what was happened at that time, Pakistan was not really taken accountable to any activities. I personally was there when they poured a lot of equipment, a lot of weapons to Afghan Mujahideen, and then it was a team coming to do an assessment or evaluation. The team arrived in Karachi. The depot for the weapons for Afghans in Rawalpindi was burned off and exploded because nobody can count. Nobody knows what was burned over there. I mean, the people knows it, but they don't make it public. So then in that case, did they keep accountable? Anyone? And then Ziaulak was the president of Pakistan. He was clearly saying Hizb Islami is the only choice for Afghanistan. And then because he was insisting, nobody knows how he was crashed in the plane. And then we had a government which was made in Pakistan and sent to Afghanistan. Did anybody oppose? No, they began to recognize them. Then we had Taliban, and the Taliban was only recognized by 3 countries, Pakistan, Emirate, and Saudi. I was talking with someone in the plane that Emirate recognized Taliban government, and he was refusing. No way. How Emirate can? And even currently, they have troops in Helmand supporting the British and Americans in Helmand, and they find Taliban. I don't know. I don't want this to be. I don't have enough information to be quoted on, but this is the reality. And then how much they keep our neighbors accountable to their activities. And how much they learn how our neighbors are interfering in Afghanistan successfully and not the Western countries. No, they didn't. How much they really put money on madrasas? Iran and Pakistan. And when we ask for education in Afghanistan, simply, as Monika said, that it's 12 years that we are talking about gender mainstreaming. There is no single gender studies program anywhere in the country. Everybody has their own interpretation of gender, including GIZ. If you look at their document that they are training on gender, and the translation is so poor, it's very difficult to understand somebody who knows a little bit gender. You don't get anything from those papers and curriculum that they make for gender. So why nobody is supporting this? We are talking about women's rights and women's education and women empowerment. Why not a women college? Will it be very costly? I don't think. $2 million. We can have building, we can have a women college running with qualification. Not more. I mean, what is $2 million or €2 million for millions, hundreds of millions which Germany is giving? Billions with the army over there. So there's no proper political commitment to build the capacity of Afghans. And now even now even they bring their translators to their own countries. The one who knew a little bit French, they will get asylum because they're working with the France army, and the Germans bring their own. The British already announced that they are going to give asylum. So what's going on?
It's also very clear the asylum.
I think the question of Till was much more on the networks which are crisscrossing the borders. There's millions of Afghans living in Pakistan, in Iran, in Dubai. I mean, it's also kind of a resource for the rebuilding of Afghanistan.
Yes, but we should should prepare the environment for them to come back. I mean, the people. I mean, all of them almost came, but we still have human resources in those countries, including in Germany, let's say. So we have to give them a hope in order to come. At the beginning, a lot of them came. Of course, they want the high salary, which with the salary they want, we can employ 10 people over there, rather than having one expert from this. I mean, they keep saying that we have to pay the mortgage of the houses, we have to pay the insurance of our cars, we have to pay the health insurance of our family, we have to pay for our children's education. They also have the right to say, but it caused another condition, another conflict within the country between the one who comes from here and the one who been there and sacrificed. And we had recently, before I left Afghanistan, we had Afghanistan, India, and Pakistan trilateral dialogue organized by Canadian Ottawa University. And the Pakistani man who was the previous chair the head director of ISI, General Durrani, he said, well, all these ministers which came by B-52. And I said, no, I'm not one of those. I was here but before B-52. So that is another problem in the country. But I think if we really committed to development in Afghanistan and promotion of democracy, we should prepare the environment for them. Look at the quality of education in the universities in Afghanistan. Very low. Look at the quality of education of the schools. Yes, we have 9 million, but what is the quality? Can we compete? I mean, small scale laborers, a lot is coming from Pakistan to Afghanistan to work. And that's why they facilitate for the suicide attacks. And the half-built building, usually they take position in those areas and attack the American embassy, the ISAF, the parliament, because it's Pakistani laborers work there. We don't know if it's labor or if it's Taliban. They're poor labor and the Taliban give them $1,000. Why not? He'll learn $1,000 in 3 months. But if he get it in 1 hour to let somebody enter to the building and nobody keeps him accountable, why not? He has 10 children back in Peshawar or in Quetta.
Okay, no, several hands up there. Let's start over there.
My name is Heike Schütz, Women's Network for Peace. I'm very glad, Monika, that you mentioned UN Resolution 1325 because I think it must be referred to in the context that we talk about here. This resolution is binding because it was passed by the Security Council, and our government in Germany has not taken care to have a national action plan until last year. So it took 12 years for the German government to consider this resolution properly. And I think if we would have had the action plan, the national action plan before, we would have had more in our hands to go to our government to say, now look here, where are women? Why aren't they in your program? But I understand that the Mali mission now, resolution 1325, and I
I wish you all would go to the internet and read the text. It's really great, the 20 paragraphs. And the last paragraph says that the Security Council will be involved. That means every 3 years, all the governments who have aligned to the United Nations must write a report. And it is very difficult for them to say how they have integrated into their programs, international programs, any mission, any intervention, any development program, how they include women. This is one thing I would like to mention, and my question is, what can we do now that the second phase in Afghanistan will be with a different mission? What can we do to our government really to make sure that this resolution will be implemented? Shall we go? Shall we make a go in foreign ministry? We have written, we have talked, we have conferences, we have even printed out all the 20 paragraphs and put them everywhere, but nothing happens.
Monika.
Yeah. I think now we are not in an easy situation because in fact, as we said in the beginning, German government really is turning its back to Afghanistan, and this is not the best basis to start again with some advocacy for this topic. So I think, but for us feminists, I think it's normal to have new energy and then to go on because our frustration tolerance, can I say, is really rather big at least. And I think, yeah, of course we have to go on and discuss what we do with our Afghan colleagues, with AWN, where we are also in a constant contact, Afghan Women Network, to consider the current situation because of this EVA law. And such a law is absolutely also a very good example for 1325 because there the support for a legal reform, the support for laws who really criminalize all kind of violence against women, such laws are a good instrument within 1325 in order to establish a clear human rights or women rights standards. So of course this EVA law, we are in communication with the Foreign Ministry about that, really to have some pressure on that, what's going on now. And we are looking also towards beginning of July when in Kabul the next meeting for this Tokyo framework will take place. So this is a good date where we try to put our pressure also on. But you asked more in general, as I understood. And I think, of course, whether Mali in the beginning or Afghanistan in the situation before, as you said, this second phase, of course now we have to analyze really very clearly where are we going after for and after 2014 and what are our requests now, and to connect it with the newly national action plan we have in Germany now since 2012 and to connect it. I completely agree, we have to take action also ourselves, but first I think we are in a momentum now to analyze together with our Afghan friends what are the next steps, and then with with united power in Germany we have to go on with our action, yeah, of course.
You want to add something?
Yes, I think the women were ignored from the beginning in Afghanistan, and they continue to do so because it's the question of control and power and so on. Monika, you remember the first time we met each other? I was calling for inclusion of women from the beginning, very loudly. That's why they put me as a minister, because to keep me quiet, without any consultation with me. I think I was in Bonn when I got a message from the UN that Lakhtar Ibrahimi wants to see me in New York, and they would arrange. I came here with Terre de Femme. And they organized the city tours for me to talk and speak about women's situation, and I was calling for inclusion of women. But they usually want some of us to be a good, quiet woman to be there for to show our faces. It's not always they look really for empowered, qualified women. One of the fight that I always do with the president, because in the second term before in the inauguration, he announced that he will include more women in the government system or in the state institutions. And then when he introduced the cabinet, it was only one woman, only the Minister of Women's Affairs. And then I wish she were protested, but she didn't. So we with the civil society, we went out and hold a press conference, and I said, it's a month later that the president does not keep the promise. Then what we did this press conference, and then we came back to our office, to the Human Rights Commission office, and I wrote a letter to the president that on behalf of Afghan women, although most of the women didn't know that I did it on behalf of them, I wrote on behalf of Afghan women, we want 5 ministries. So who is nominated for this ministry? All of them had master's degrees at least. Which ministries? 2, 3 choices for the president. And then he had to put another 2 women, to include another 2 women. I think first we as women, we should have confidence in ourselves, that we are able to do and we will do it. 2, I think we should not fall on the politics of when we are in the government and we are in position, then we should listen and do whatever the boss wants us to do. And we should not forget that we are women and we came on behalf of these. 3, I think on these resolutions, we need to give awareness to the women. They should know about it, and then in order to use it as a tool. And nobody is willing to do that. I mean, we keep asking if they really give us a small amount of money that we could hold workshops for the girls who are in Kabul University dormitory to know about 1325. When they go back to their villages, they will be our messenger. No?
Well, it's a revolution, so keep it low.
Yeah. Not, in fact, in some of the issues, we are not in bad position for the equal salary, for example, equal wage. We have equal salary in Afghanistan from the beginning.
Just no jobs.
Yes.
Or much too few.
Yes.
Much too few.
You get just 1, 2, 3% over there. First, yeah.
Thank you. Gerd Schönwelder. I'm a visiting researcher at the German Development Institute, where I'm looking at democracy support in emerging powers. And that's also a bit of a question that I wanted to put to you. It seems to be pretty clear that the role that Western countries, Germany, Canada, US, others have played in and around Afghanistan is going to decrease. It seems pretty clear also that the role that civil society in these countries has played is going to diminish in years to come. So the obvious question would be, what about the countries in the vicinity? What role are they going to play? And I'm going to build a little bit on the question that was asked about the transboundary networks that could be built. And I have to admit I was a little dissatisfied with the answer that you provided. I wish to probe you a little bit more. I can't imagine that there's so little that can be had there. But my question really is, what about the countries as such? You know, if we had a situation, we did have a situation where Western countries were so involved in Afghanistan, and they are leaving now. They're going to vacate that space, so to speak. Wouldn't there be a case for other countries to move in there, such as India, perhaps, which sees itself as a democratic power, as well as possibly others? And the dynamic that could result from that is an open question, as far as I can see. So I wonder if you had any views on that. Is that a good thing? Will it happen at all? Will these countries take an interest? Will they not? If they do, will it be a good thing? Will it help to open the kinds of spaces that you were talking about that you need in the country in order to continue the work that you've been doing? Will it be bad for it? What do you see happening?
I think that there's no doubt that we will face more difficult situation in terms of security and economically after 2014. Particularly, we already see some signs of it. There's security there's more insecurity and it's more economical pressure on the people because it's they're living. So the people who have transportation company, or they were working as a logistical officer for them and translators for them, and now they are losing their jobs. And this is very clear. I think on transboundary, I believe that we need, first of all, we really need to build the confidence and trust in order to have this kind of work. Because if any Pakistanis come, even if they speak in favor of us, we feel that they are enemy, unfortunately. We have a lot of Indians already working in Afghanistan. We have a lot of Indian companies who are participating on the reconstruction, and also Indians who are working in different NGOs or UN agencies. And also we have a lot of Indians who brought by the private sectors as a manager for the shopping mall, or as a manager for a hotel, or as a manager for accounting companies. So there are people there from India. But then wherever the Indian presence are getting more or visible, then Pakistan attacks. So the problem here is that within the region we have to build the confidence. We have to sit honestly and say that let's solve this problem. We all in denial mode. And the Pakistan is claiming that the Indian is in Afghanistan because to bother us, to have activities against Pakistan. Then Iranians are intervening on some of the issues because they want to harass the Americans over there. So we're actually, again, a ground for different tensions and problems around us, in the region and also outside of the region. I think we need a strong intervention by maybe European countries in the UN to bring us all together and say that let's do it. I mean, the Durand line between us and Pakistan. Even if the American says that we recognize this Durand line, then the Afghans get crazy, some of them actually. Oh no, we don't accept this. In reality, we cannot get those places or that line abolished between us and Pakistan. So it's very clear. We know it, we understand it, but we can't say because we will be blamed that we are not nationalist. We are not good Afghans. It's crazy opinion. Kashmir is same. I was discussing with the Indian friends during the lunch. When you speak in the trilateral that Kashmir is a problem, and the Indian says, no, we call it Kashmir as an issue. In one of the trilateral meetings, I said, you call it whatever. But it is a problem. That's why the Pakistanis are promoting the extremists. And it's same in the Iran line. We keep saying 1,000 times our own president said the other side of the line. Not in our country. But when we mention the Durand line, then he's, oh no, we don't recognize this. What is this? Let's sit in recognize these things and give the people the choice. The Pakistanis, in fact, most of those people who are involved in Afghanistan are Pashtun Pakistanis. They don't want to be Afghan. They're doing they're causing more problem for the Afghans. One of them, who's again a retired general, he's saying, the Taliban are fighting because the Pashtun is not given enough power in Afghanistan. And I said, I'm really sorry. You as a Pashtun, you're claiming that the Taliban are representative of Pashtuns in Afghanistan?
Yeah.
It's so sad how narrow-minded you are, and you insult yourself as an ethnic group. So it is very complicated, but there is ways. I don't see any problem without solution. There is solutions, there is ways to deal with, but first of all, we have to have political commitment. I hope you're satisfied with my question.
Yes, I can understand the question of you both, because this is also, I see that it's also among women activists. It seems easier that Afghan women activists have their discussion with German activists than with activists from Pakistan. And we just have to observe this. And I think you gave part of this answer. But just recently in Lisbon, I met Asma Jahangir, who is a very well-recognized human rights activist also, and especially a lawyer for women's rights in Pakistan. And we discussed this very difficult situation about EVA law now, and she immediately had some ideas for support. And I said, okay, why don't you come to Kabul, or colleagues go to Pakistan to meet you in order to go on. But I realized it was a special, an extraordinary idea, it seemed. Also for Afghan colleagues, first moment they said, we have to think about. So I don't want to comment it. I just want to say that I made this observation, and we will see whether, at least in this special case, now networking can go on. I hope very much on that.
Yeah.
Particular to this question, sorry, I think we have got to also just particular to this question. Then one answer regarding the research ZEF did in Afghanistan. So what we found out, the one who are asking for rule of law in northern Afghanistan are most the one who before were labor workers in Iran. Because of course the people who went to Iran, they often get a completely different understanding of state. If they're coming back, they're asking for this kind of state. So there are some changes, and there are, I would say, the kind of agents of change, particularly the one who went to Iran. This was found very, very interesting. Here, next question.
Yeah. Just to add to my personal knowledge, I would like to know which factors are already there and which women activists can build on in Afghanistan. If you want to make a project, or if you want to, kind of do something, what can they bank on in order to improve the situation already?
Before you answer, let's look at are there other questions afterwards? Otherwise, after this question, I would then close this panel. Abdi, we got still? Okay. Another one. Okay. But then can we have all three questions together? Abdi?
The question I had was actually a follow-up of the last question. There was also a bit of a white elephant in the room, and that was in the context of China. And if you look at a lot of post-war counterinsurgent spaces, say in parts of Africa or in Sri Lanka, for instance, you had these regional superpowers, for instance China, that have stepped in. You have these aid packages that have been offered, and that has also tipped, you would say, the balance of power, in local contexts, within national borders, but it has also had fundamental implications on human rights, for instance. So I wanted to know what your take on that was, and how you foresee the future of Afghanistan probably panning out in that sort of context.
So we got your question, please?
Yes, my question is on suicide bombers. The rate of suicide bombing is quite alarming and has been going on for quite many years now. Do you know where these suicide bombers get their supply of weapons, and is there a way of controlling them or managing this supply of weapons?
Okay, we have the last question here.
I think that Afghanistan is strategically located, whether it's for US or Russia or anyone, Pakistan.
But look,
I think they all played the big brother role.
yes.
And now I have a feeling that India is trying to play a big brother role after their successful operation in Sri Lanka. You know, that's why the big development aid and other understanding, even though we had, definitely we had very good relationship with Afghanistan, whether during Talibanism or even now. So, but right now what I look at it after listening to you, whether India's role will be a different role, there will be any understanding between the two governments, like some kind of cooperation they are undertaken in Sri Lanka will be also done in Afghanistan for their own strategic interest.
That's one. I just want to.
Okay, very last.
Sima, my question is, how do I put it? You are saying that building confidence in your own country. But I'm saying here, what is the consensus in your own country between all the group who really want peace? Is there anything that you arrive at it? Like independent of other thinkings or independent of money coming or solidarity given? What is the kind of solidarity between the peace groups, not only women alone? I think women, many other groups. What is the kind of consensus? And some people in the government is not totally, ignorant or nonsensical people, but I think they are also thinking. So, what is the consensus? How you want to relate to others? How we are seeing at this moment? Who are going to be allies? Is there a strategic plan of your own to deal with this, massive? I would say that massive. One side, I would say destructive forces, massive, solidarity forces. Do you have a plan? I don't want an answer. I'm just posing this question, which is, I don't want you to, it's a big thesis. But I'm thinking that, is that you have evolved a plan as a nation for your own self?
A basket full of questions, and if you look on the watch, I think about everyone has got about 5 minutes to answer this question and to summarize your point, because I think we have to finish in about 10 minutes, so 5 minutes for each of you, and I'm afraid that we will not be able to answer all the questions,
Okay.
but at least some of them.
I think I focus on Afghans and build their capacity. One answer. The other one on the suicide attacks, I think as far as we have poverty, as far as we have lack of education, lack of social justice, and lack of justice, the suicide attack will continue. In fact, we didn't have suicide attack when we were fighting against Russia. No single case. It just came after 2002, particularly after Iraq. So it will be there if you don't solve the problem. Role of India, I think India has their own political interest, there's no doubt on it, and they want to play, and they did play in other countries. And I don't know how much in Nepal, but in Sri Lanka, clearly. That is really an issue. On the last question, I think it's really important to sit and realize and build the confidence. That confidence would come to empower your own people. So the solution for the region, for all of us, for India, for Pakistan, for Iran, for Afghanistan, is education, reduction of poverty. Generally, I would say that provision of human security.
And reduction of weaponization.
I think when we are talking about human security, then the reduction of weaponization and weapon will be really one of the issues. In fact, one of the Indians were saying that because China is building their weaponry, so we have to also focus on our weaponization, or building more new weapons and develop new weapons. But that cannot be an excuse. Feed your hungry people. Provide contraception to the woman who lives in the street.
What to add to that? I mean, these are, I think the last 3 points were exactly that, what is necessary, and the terrible these suicide attacks are. I don't think they are the main concern, daily concern of Afghan people. The terrible they are, no question about this. But the girls in Herat, Mazar, Jalalabad and so on, I don't think that they think about suicide attackers. They think about that they are not allowed to go to school, that they have to marry with 11, 12, 13 years, that they have to get one child after the other, that it should be one boy after the other, that they get sexualized violence each night, that they are not in any condition to claim their own rights, and so on and so on. I think this is something what really has to be strengthened and empowered, and I see that Medica Afghanistan and other organizations, and there are a lot of grassroots organizations, women's organizations in the whole country, that I really build on these organizations, and that we need capacity building, and with these capacities then we can make awareness raising for human security, for human rights for the whole population, and that we have to include women and in all levels of society, and that this could be the way to more progress, to more peace for everybody. But still, I would like to say we have an inner war in this country. We have a war of men against women. And before we do not have reconciliation of this inner war, also the outer reconciliation will not work. For me, these both things go hand in hand. And I really just can say once more that that we will hold accountable also German government, as we are sitting here in Germany, to go on with their solidarity, to go on with their loyalty. I hope that the medias, if there are still media representatives here, that the medias have to go on to publish about situation of the population in Afghanistan, not only about military issues, but really about what's going on in this country, what are really the problems of the people, and that also the German people are ready to support. And this is something where we really have to go on and have to show our loyalty even when our soldiers have left Afghanistan.
Monika, Sima, thank you very much for this discussion, which made clear how complex the situation in Afghanistan is and was. I think this became very clear, and you made, I think, particularly clear what is the role of women, in particular what is the situation of women's rights. It also became clear that Afghanistan is facing tough times, a tough future. Particularly, I think the next year will become very crucial for this country. But I also like to thank you, because I got also a certain kind of hope. Because you are so powerful women, that I really got a hope also, and see some light on the end of the tunnel. At least I see some ways in which direction, also in a positive way, Afghanistan can continue to work. So I thank you very much. I found your talk very inspiring. Also, thank you very much for your question. And I'm sure that the issue of Afghanistan will, at least the ones who are here in this room, also think about in the next year. So thank you very much for coming.